Hi guys, how are you? So we are middle to end, kind of in between of our second week with 80 Day Obsession. And by now, for those of you that are doing the full on timed nutrition, you should at this point in time be feeling, and your body should have adjusted to that new time nutrition piece as far as eating every 2 to 3 hours, the way that the food containers go together. By this point in time, you should have adjusted. It was funny because in our test group with the coaches, one of the things that there was a lot of coaches that talked about, because I even said the same thing when we started, was, man, I'm going to be eating a little bit more food, and I just, I'm not. I'm kind of afraid of that, and I talked about that really big about 2 weeks ago. But what Autumn came in and said is that, man, people are talking about how, like, man, I'm doing this, and like I'm actually still kind of hungry. I feel like I could eat more. And so I want to kind of talk to you about that a little bit, as far as this is a time to evaluate whether or not for these next 2 weeks while we finish up phase one, because phase one is 4 weeks before we move on to phase two, we kind of need to determine for each of you that are doing the time nutrition piece of it, if you are going to be sticking with the current eating plan that you're on, or if we need to change you and bump you up to a different eating plan. So here's a couple of things that I want you to consider to kind of determine whether or not you might be a candidate for moving up to a different meal plan. So number one, if about every hour and a half to 2 hours, if about an hour and a half in, you're like, man, I'm starting to get hungry. And if by 2 hours, you're like, I've got to eat now. If you are, every hour and a half starting to get hungry, or at 2 hours, you're like, I'm famished, I've got to eat right now, I cannot wait. That would be an indicator that we might need to look at bumping you up to the next meal plan. If you are finding that you're having frequent headaches, or you're like, oh, my stomach, it's going to eat itself type of thing, that obviously, would be a sign that we need to look at bumping you up to a meal plan. The other thing is that if your mind is kind of in a fog, if you're like, I can't concentrate, I'm doing stuff, but I just can't really focus very well and things like that. And, that could be another sign essentially that you are needing to bump up your eating plan. Because again, you're not getting enough nutrients. You're not getting enough fuel for your body to operate the way that it needs to. If you are waking up in the middle of the night, not when you wake up in the morning, because I talked about that earlier this week. If I wake up in the morning, am I hungry? Good, you're supposed to be, because your body was, working last night to recover. But if you are waking up in the middle of the night because you are hungry, then we want to look at possibly bumping you up to a different meal plan. If that's the case, if you fit one of those criteria pieces, if it's something where you're like, man, I'm hungry and it's getting close to bedtime and I could kind of have a snack, I feel like I kind of want a snack, that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how we are starving. We cannot go more than an hour and a half to 2 hours without eating. That's what I want us to look at bumping up to that meal plan. If that is you, I want you to let me know so I can kind of talk you through what that change is going to be. It takes about 2 weeks for our bodies to, for some of us, it takes like 4 to 5 days for our bodies to adapt. But for our bodies to really, not only do we feel it, but then we can also then perform it. Like we feel it one way, but then our bodies can perform it with the next way. It really takes about a 2-week process for our bodies to adjust with everything. So we're coming up at the end of our first 2 weeks in phase one. And so now is the time to evaluate as far as whether or not we need to bump that up or not. I will not be bumping up. I am still perfectly fine within the phase that I am. Now that I am finishing up week 2, I am perfectly fine with where I am. But I need to make sure that you guys are at the same time. I know probably over half of the coaches that are in the test group with me ended up bumping up for these last 2 weeks of phase one. So it's not uncommon. A lot of it has to do with the amount, that with the calories that you're burning throughout the day and things like that. Usually on Wednesday nights when I had dance last week, I burned like probably close to 1,300 calories that day alone. I will tell you, I was starving last night, and I'll be honest, today, because I'm a week ahead of you guys. I'm actually recording this, as you guys know, like a week ahead. Today I've noticed that I am more hungry today than what I am usually. But here's the deal. I also, though, am not usually burning 1,300 calories every single day. Okay. If I was, I'd be bumping up to meal plan C, but I only do that like once a week. So I'm fine to stay at meal plan B. Now, if you are finding you're like, there's just one time of day where I maybe have a 4-hour stretch or a 5-hour stretch between my meals. Like, for instance, if you're like, man, I'm basically eating dinner at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and I'm not going to bed till 10 or whatever, or I'm working out late in the evening, anybody can add one green during those long times that they have expanded where they need a meal in between those pieces. You can add one green to that in between those large gaps of time and be perfectly fine. Okay. So if you're like, because I get up at 4:45, but I also know that there's some nights I may not be able to eat dinner till 7 o'clock at night. That's too long of a time span for me to go with it. I will have eaten all my meals by like 4:30. That's too long. So I add a green in on those days. Now with that green that I add, I either eat it raw or I steam it, and then I can put some seasoning on it, but I don't put any oil on it. I don't dip it in any type of dressing. I don't add a teaspoon of anything. It's just either seasonings with it steamed or it's raw. So I want to know, kind of just real quick, comment below if you feel or think that you're going to stay on the same meal plan for these last 2 weeks, or if you think you probably need to bump up a meal plan. And if that's the case, then I'll get with you so we can kind of talk about what those changes are going to be. So kind of think about that. Right now, I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely having some non-scale victories. I have not weighed myself since we started the program. I will not weigh myself to the end of phase 1. But I can tell already in just a lot of different things that are non-scale pieces as far as victory. So I'm sure that you guys are starting to see the same things and feel the same way too. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you guys later. All right, bye guys.